Well, Ellen, I'm so excited to see you this morning. Um, y'all, Ellen and I met when we went to Northwestern State University in Natchitoches, and we're friends and have stayed friends through Facebook, watching each other's lives. And I'm so happy that when I asked for people to reach out if they had an adoption story to share, that you hit my inbox. I think you were the first person or one of the first people to respond. And I just appreciate you being open to share your story with us.
Absolutely. So it's funny, your post on Facebook when you mentioned the adoption was actually on my gotcha day. And I was like, well, okay, well, that's fitting, you know. And I get emotional. It's kind of
You've already
silly
got me
sometimes.
well
I
enough.
know. So I was adopted as an infant. My parents were not able to have children on their own. And so they reached out to the Edna Gladney Center in Fort Worth, Texas, which is now the Gladney Adoption Center. You know, they had to change names. And I was born July 30th of 1980, and they brought me home on October the 8th of 1980. And um, we never got into like why my parents couldn't have children. That's not something I ever asked, or, was it, different reasons or whatever. But I am so thankful that God gave me the parents that I had. And it's harder now that both of my parents are passed away, have passed away in the last, my dad passed away 14 years ago. And then my mom passed away a year ago. And so it's a totally different um, way of life, I guess you could say, because there's not that parent child relationship anymore. And that's something that until you've gone through it, you don't truly know what it's like. You can empathize with your friends or your family members, but until you've gone through it and can truly say, I don't have parents here anymore, it's kind of like you start back at that, you're an orphan again kind of type thing. And that's something that is not what people think about. And it's different. It's not a oh, okay, buddy, sorry. It's just a different place in your life that everyone will go through at some point in time. Some a lot younger than we are, some are a lot older. And you just have to, I guess, accept it and know that that was God's plan for you. And so for those 43 years, that's something I will forever cherish and be thankful for, that they were my parents.
Were you an only child?
I was an only child. So, my parents adopted me in 1980, and in about springtime of 1982, my parents were in the process of adopting another child. And in September of 1982, my dad was diagnosed with cancer.
Hmm.
And because of that, they could not adopt another child at that time because of going through treatments and not knowing life expectancy, because at that time they had given my dad just 3 months to live. And MD Anderson, my parents basically moved us to Houston, and my dad went through treatments and lived for 29 more years. So it was, because of that. I mean, I am an only child. I was spoiled rotten, which, I wouldn't trade it for anything because I loved it. Did I want siblings? Absolutely. But we had neighbors who had 4 children who are like my siblings. I mean, my daughter calls them her aunts and uncles, and I had cousins who we were very close with. But, um, it's
Well, Ellen, I always said I either wanted one child or four.
Well, you got your four.
So, when I had my first one and then
Uh-huh.
3 months old and I got an adopted one, then I was like, I guess I have to go for four because I said one or four and there was no.
Right.
So I always
Right.
saw value in being an only child.
Uh-huh.
Thought, okay, not two. What if you don't get along with that one? Not three. There's a middle child. So just like four,
Right. Right.
right? So
Right.
um that was my little wink to like, I guess you're having four. So I do think it's beautiful when you get to be an only child and hearing that your parents, obviously had fertility challenges that allowed their hearts to be open and choose that they
Right.
wanted you and they had all that love for you. So
Yeah.
I think that's definitely beautiful. You mentioned that you were born July 30th
Uh-huh.
and then
Uh-huh.
you were adopted in October.
Yes.
So tell me what that looked like. You were born in a hospital. Like, what do you know about that time?
Okay, so I know more than some people do, and I actually have, and I didn't get it out this morning. I should have. I have a little book from Edna Gladney that they created for my parents, and after my dad passed away, we were going through some paperwork, and I found it, and my mom said, "Well, it wasn't. We weren't hiding it from you. We just thought one day you'd want it, and I'd never asked for it. I never asked questions, so." I was born early. I was born, I think my due date was September-ish. And so I was born early. I was 4 pounds, 11 ounces. And so they put me, I guess, in foster care maybe for a couple months until my gotcha day, until I was a certain weight that I could go home with my
Okay.
birth parents. I don't know the ins and outs and the specific details about that, but I do know that that's my mom and dad. So it's a little funny story. So my mom and dad flew, they got the call on October the 6th, which is my aunt's birthday, my mom's sister's birthday, who I was most close with. And they got the call on October the 6th and they flew from Baton Rouge to Dallas. And on the 7th, and then went to dinner at Cattleman's Steakhouse in Fort Worth on that 7th, on that evening. And when they drove to the Edna Gladney home on the 8th to pick me up, they were sitting in their rental car. And my mom says, this lady, nice looking lady, was getting a baby out of the car. And she saw a glimpse of my face and she said, Tom, that's our baby. She looks just like you. And so it's funny to hear my mom, share those little details. But so I mean, I don't remember any of that, obviously. I have pictures of, when my parents got me. And then that afternoon, they flew back to Baton Rouge.
Oh, wow.
And so, then I think they went back. I don't even know that we went back to Dallas for like the official adoption day. I think maybe we just got the paperwork. I never asked those questions, but it's not something that was ever hidden from me or looked at as, oh, I'm the adopted kid. In fact, a cousin of mine, we grew up together. She's probably 4 years younger than me. We were at my dad's visitation, and one of my dad's friends said something about me being adopted. And she goes, What? What are you talking about? And I said, Well, yeah, I'm adopted. And she goes, You look just like your parents. And I just kind of giggled. And I was like, No, I've always been adopted. It's something we've always been open and honest about. And we used to go in the Baton Rouge area. They had the Gladney Auxiliary in Baton Rouge. And so I would go to Christmas parties and other Easter egg hunts with other adopted children from the Edna Gladney home. And so we had our own little, community and connections. And there were, it's neat to later, as you get older, see how like my parents told other people about adoption and then they adopted their children. And it's one of those, there was definitely a bigger picture. And as you get older, now that you're 44 and you have your own child and your own family, you're like, gosh, my parents really did some really amazing, great things that as a child, you have no idea, you know, you
Yeah.
don't realize the little things that are actually the big things, you
Yeah.
know. And you're not told these things, or you know, your parents don't you know, I don't know how um your adoption process went, but you know, at my mom's funeral, one of her friends came and she said, "You know, we wouldn't have our baby without you." And I was like, "Well, I don't know this story." And so, you know, it's just neat, and it's something that some people are like, "Oh, you're adopted," you know, kind of look at you like you're, "Oh," and I'm like, "It's amazing." Like my parents picked me,
Hey,
you know, but it's fun.
well, when you
They
talk,
chose to love me, I guess is the best way to say it. They didn't, you know, when you get pregnant, you either choose to love this baby or want someone else to love it. I don't even want to talk about the other option because I have such a strong opinion about it because of I wouldn't be here if my mother would have chosen that.
right.
Um, but my parents chose to adopt and to love me. And that is huge and selfless. And my birth mother chose to give me to them. And that is one of the most selfless things that an individual can do. And I've never met her. I have no desire to meet her, but I am forever thankful to her.
Well, thank you for that. And that was going to be my questions. I was wondering if you had met her. And so,
No.
what I love about what you said is so true about the stone that we throw into the water and
Mm-hmm.
the ripple effects that happen. So as you were
Yeah.
telling that story, my brain is so visual. I could just see, when you say that you've adopted, then your mom's phone probably rang a lot and she might have been on the phone
Yeah.
talking to people about adoption or helping them. And as a child, running around, you're
Wow.
thinking, oh, she's on the phone again. Like, why are
Right.
you talking about this?
Right. What is she doing now? Yeah.
Yes, and oh, do you have to keep talking about this? But that was her work, and you
Right.
will never know the width of
Correct. You
those
don't.
ripples.
You don't.
And they're not done because now,
No.
like you are still spreading it. Like even just
Yeah.
talking to me about this today. And you mentioned something that sometimes is fearful for people that are trying to
Mhm.
adopt. And
Mhm.
that is, what if they want to go find their birth parents later? Or what
Right.
if,
Right.
they reject this or just all the what ifs. And I think that's just the devil putting doubt. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
because who knows what somebody's going to want? I mean, I was a
Yeah.
born child to my parents, and I'm the most inquisitive thing ever. And so I ask questions
Right.
they may not have wanted
Right.
to
So,
answer.
you know, like I said, I do have, there's a little packet that has information on my birth parents, like my birth mother's height and, her hair color and some, medical,
Oh, wow.
things. And then same thing for my dad. And, once I found that when I was, what, 30, after my dad passed away, my mom said to me, and she said, if, your dad and I have always, you can go find your birth mother. And I said, I have no desire. And she said, but if you do, please do it while I'm still around. And I was taken aback, like, Mom, I would never do that. And I was kind of like, just like, how dare you think that? And then probably 5 years later, she said, because I want to thank her. And I was like, like I was thinking a different view, not for my mom to say, thank you for this child type thing. And so now that, I will say that both of my parents are gone, the thought has crossed my mind of, well, I wonder, because the things that I do know about my birth mother and my birth father are that they were older. So my birth mother would be probably 85-ish now. Um, and so the likelihood that she's still living is slimmer. And so I don't want to open that can and go, oh, well, she's not here anymore type thing. And so it's just kind of one of those, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't type thing. But then I also, in the back of my mind, have my mom going, I'm not here. I'm not, I told you not to do it while I wasn't here. So I'm like, okay, I can't do it. But there, the one negative I can say about adoption is not knowing medical history. That is the one thing that I find to be sometimes frustrating, because you'll go to the doctor and they'll ask you these questions and you're like, I don't know, I'm adopted. And they go, oh, well, it could be all these things. And I'm like, okay, well, if I had any idea, maybe we could narrow whatever down. But in the grand scheme of things, that's one thing, it's not. But my friend, I do know that she found her birth mother, and that it was a wonderful experience for her. She has now since passed away. The birth mother has, but she doesn't regret that at all. In fact, she has a brother that the mom and the dad had after they had her, and
Wow.
so she sees him and he comes to visit her family, and that's wonderful. Like, I think that is amazing. But then I've also seen the negative side of it, where the birth mother finds the child without the child wanting that, and it causes disruption, and it's not a good fit, and ends up heartbreakingly ruining a family. And that just, there's so many different dynamics and different ways that things happen, that I look at it as, okay, do I want to find my birth mother? Do I think it would be interesting? Yes. But am I ready for that? I'm 44, and I can honestly say, no, I'm not. Which is, I don't know if it's selfish. I don't know if it's, I, I
But
don't
it sounds
know.
like you're content. Like,
Yes. No.
and
And I think that's the right word.
you're a faithful person. So tell
Yeah.
me how faith has
Uh-huh.
played a role in just your life, your story. Like, I feel like you're grounded and you're secure. And I have to believe, just looking around you, I can tell you're a faithful person. And so I have to believe that a lot of that is a gift of grace that God
Hmm.
gave you
Yeah,
to say, I had a role for you in life, and this is where I put you. So maybe
absolutely.
some of that with us.
So I mean, I was raised Southern Baptist. My dad was a deacon in the church. Um, I was raised to believe that, God is love, and you believe in Jesus, and this is what you do, kind of thing, as you would say, as a Southern Baptist, right? You're in church when the doors are open. But I also know that God placed me with my parents because that was his plan for me. Um, and without that, I wouldn't have had the life I had. Ben and I, when we were dating and we found out we had been dating 2 or 3 weeks, and we were out with some friends, and I said, tell me something I don't know about you. Tell me one thing. He said, I'm adopted. I said, shut up. No, you're not. I'm adopted. And he was like, yes, I am. I said, and so we start talking about it, and he called his mom to prove to me that he was adopted. And I was like, okay. And it's funny, his aunt and uncle, who we're very close with, their 2 children are adopted as well. And so it's neat to see how all of that, and how you interact. Um, when we were dating, we both said, "Oh, well, we'll just adopt. We're not going to have children. We're going to adopt." And then Sarah Jane came along, And Ben and I started talking about adopting because I she was a total surprise and was not planned. And I was never able to get pregnant again after that. And so we talked about having, adopting another child after we went through hormone therapies and things like that. And I never got pregnant again. And so I'm like, well, she is our only child. And when we recently moved back to Texas, she said, Mom, we could foster and adopt. I'm like,
Oh,
I love that, but you're 15. I'm 44. I don't know that I can do a baby. And so then we've talked about an older child or things like that, but it's one of those you just got to pray through. That's not something you can make a quick snap decision on. Um, so it's neat to see the plans you think you have for yourself and your family and how God says, no, I don't think so. This is what we're going to do. Do I get a little upset and frustrated at the fact that there are things that I should have asked my mom or paid more attention to? Absolutely, because I can't ask her anymore and there's no one else to ask. So I get a little agitated with myself sometimes. I'm like, oh, I should have asked her this, or I should have, but she has told me the adoption story and the day they picked me up and brought me home so many times that I feel like I know it like the back of my hand. And I say my brothers and sisters who are my neighbors' children that I grew up with, their closest one in my age to me is 6 years, and or 7 years, either way. And they said when they brought me home, because my parents treated their younger girls like they were their children before they brought me home, that they were like, oh, we're not, she's ruining the mode, she's ruining everything, because we were the kids before she came along. And to the point where my dad said that, you were our girls before we had her. And it's sweet to see that now we truly have like a sibling relationship, and their parents, now that my parents are gone, I've kind of,
well,
I'm the fifth child, and they say that like, well, you're the fifth kid. And so it's just really super sweet. And it's really nice to see Sarah Jane is very close
yeah.
with.
So one of the things I want to ask you about, so when you're little, you hear the word unconditional love.
Mm-hmm,
Did
mm-hmm.
you understand what that meant? Or when did you figure it out?
I mean, I really can't tell you the age that I was, but I think being in church, they tell you Jesus has unconditional love, and, your parents love you, but your parents also choose to love, like in the adoption story, your parents are choosing to give you that love. And, I can remember I did give my parents a run for their money with the sassy mouth and, just kind of being like a spoiled brat. And I can remember my mom telling me, I don't remember how old I was, maybe 13. And she said, it was the summertime. I distinctly remember that. She was folding towels on the couch. And she said, I'd gotten mad about something. And she said, well, if you think you can find someone that loves you more than we do, go find them.
Oh,
And I was so mad. I was like, that's not, like, how dare you say that to me, kind of thing. And so I remember I stormed off and I shut my bedroom door and never talked about it again. Like, we just kind of just
moved
went
on.
on about it. We're not talking about it. And when I think back now, I can see how hurt my mom must have been at whatever it was, whatever I was doing. But for her to say that, just now as a mom, I'm like, oh God, I can't believe she said that. But it's true. I mean, very true. And and as I got older, I can remember her saying, you, I hate that I get so emotional.
I love
Um,
it. It's your heart.
she said, you made your dad and my life. Like we were happy because of you. And looking back now, all the times that I thought they were just being mean or being, you know, being mean parents. You think that as you're growing up, they were not. They were doing what they thought was best for me or making decisions and sacrifices that you don't understand at the time. And that I think is probably one of the hardest parts. Whether you're adopted or not, if your parents love you, that you're going to be able to see that as you get older, and you don't realize that when you're young. It's funny to look back now because you can't say, "Oh, mom, thanks for doing that to me. Thanks for always doing this." Um, but the unconditional love part, I really don't know that I was at a certain age that I realized like what that meant. I joke with my husband now that I'm like, well, your parents love you because they had to, because they adopted you. I choose to love you, but it's funny to like think about that. Like, well, it's there's certain God, Virginia. That's stump. That question kind of stumps you because it's a certain people say, "Oh, well, I love you because," or "I love you when," or it's not. Um, it is. It's a it. I would love to say that I feel that parenting is an unconditional love, but then there are some out there that don't love unconditionally,
Right.
and that is heartbreaking for me because I could not imagine because I had such a wonderful childhood and a wonderful life with my parents, and I strive to give that to our daughter, that I just can't imagine that type of childhood or growing up or not having that love. And I don't know, gosh, you've had me all in my feels today.
I love that. And I feel like the Holy Spirit just moves through us and through our emotions. And maybe I asked you that question because it's just something to ponder for you.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the reason I think about it is, with our daughter, would talk about how much I loved her. And I didn't think she fully understood what that meant to
Hmm.
be loved like
Hmm.
that because her situation was a little different. And come into our home at 6 after everything she'd been to, how could they love me as much as they say that they love me?
Right, right. I
And
understand that.
um, even look, I've got a combo thing, right? So I've got the adopted, I've got the birth, and there's been
Yeah,
times in different ones of
yeah.
their lives where I had to pray, Lord, help me like them.
Right, right.
This is the tough season, or I'm just not ready for this season. And so I will never forget when she had her first child. And
Hmm.
it was during COVID, so I couldn't be there in the hospital with her. And when she came home and I was there and I was in the room with her, and she looked at me and she said, I've never felt closer to you than I do today.
Hmm.
And we've talked about it since, and it's like at that moment, she got it.
She realized. Yeah, yeah,
So, you've birthed a child.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
something that your mother never experienced
Hmm.
the actual
Hmm.
birth. But
Yeah.
as an adoptive mother, I will tell you, we labor harder for y'all than we do the ones we birth. That, like nature kind of takes care
Yeah.
of itself,
Yeah.
right? But when you adopt, it's not like just carry this baby in your stomach and keep going through life.
Right.
kind of thing. And then you just like get to leave the hospital with them without any questions, which is crazy in itself.
Right.
But when you
Just a
adopt,
kid.
it is a journey, and they're
Mhm.
making sure you are worthy of that
Yeah.
baby. And so
Yeah.
many checks and balances, which I think are so important.
Right.
And it's a different labor, and you get a lot of opportunities to say, this isn't the path for me, right? There's a
Right.
lot of turn
Right.
around and run home, like maybe this isn't a good decision. But for a family that chooses to do all of the things on that checklist, to be
Mhm.
eligible to bring a child into their home, that I do believe when, like you said, the birth parents make the decision. And I love that it sounds like you had a birth mother and a biological father that jointly made a decision out of love for you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that would have been, the world would have made that decision seem like the alternative would
Mhm.
have been the much easier.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So thank you so much for sharing your story with me. It was heartfelt.
Absolutely.
And gosh, I got so many gifts from just hearing your story and how loved you were as a child, and the impact adoption had on you and your family. Do you have anything that you want to say to someone, whether they're an adopted child, or a family looking for adoption, or anybody that the Lord speaks to you, you want to say something to?
I think adoption is one of the most special gifts that a person can give and receive. Um, I really, I think that you don't understand adoption until you sit with someone who either has adopted or has been adopted and dive into their story, because no story is the same. Just like a birth story, for every child is different. They may be similar, but they're different. And how they get to their family is their own journey and their own special um, gift. It's not the right word, I don't think, but um, I will say that I get a little, when I start thinking about adoption and the wonderful gift that it was for me. I'm thankful for so many things. I'm thankful for God that placed me with my parents. I'm thankful for a birth mother who chose the selfless decision to give birth to me and give me life, and then to hand me over to someone else to raise. Do I wonder if she's thought about me? Do I wonder if she, like her thoughts, how she processed it? Um, and then I will say this, each year on Mother's Day, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because I'm so thankful for the mother that I have and the mother that God gave me to raise. To she gave me, He gave her to me for her to raise. But I also wonder about the lady that gave birth to me, and you know, does she think about me? Is she wondering how my life turned out, or does she not care? Type thing. And I think that it's also important to um, hear a birth mother's story and to hear the decision, that why they made the decision to give their child up for adoption, because every single one of them has a different reason. Um, I I'm just so thankful for it. I think back of, every year there's one month that it's the adoption month. No, it's not. Every day there is a child that's being adopted, or that is, you know, being prayed for to be adopted. And I think that's something that, as a world, that's very important, to realize that it's not just 1 month out of the year. It's probably all day, every day. There are probably parents praying for children, wanting children, or children being thankful that they were blessed with being adopted.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I do believe that the the testimony that you shared is going to encourage people because the fears that some people have of adopting, I think, I believe that your story dispels those because you were a child that was so lovable and that you are here, at this point with a life that you were grateful for, yeses that you were grateful for. And if I were sitting here listening to your story and I was somebody that was told that fertility was not in my favor, I believe that your story would open my heart and give me some courage to step out in faith that the Lord could do for me what he did for your parents all those years ago. And so thank you for being willing to share your story because I do believe people need to hear it. So keep telling it.